Jumatatu mpaka Ijumaa, moja kwa moja kutoka VOA.
Hello, I'm Esther Githu-Ewart. It's Wednesday, January 18th. This is Africa 54.
The Democratic Republic of Congo is preparing for a visit from Pope Francis, but many residents are saying the authorities' preparations are going too far. A recent report finds that escalating violent attacks linked to extremist groups in Benin's north have determined it's the new front line in the Sahel conflict. And in today's tech report, Paul and Dio will introduce us to Uganda's Code Academy, which addresses a severe shortage on skilled developers in East Africa. All this and more on today's Africa 54.
Authorities in the Democratic Republic of Congo are carrying out a facelift in Kinshasa ahead of a visit by Pope Francis in a few weeks. But those who work in the informal sector say police are going too far. David Doyle explains.
In Democratic Republic of Congo's capital, Kinshasa, police are preparing for a visit by the Pope. This pre-dawn raid is targeting makeshift stalls at a busy intersection. But traders here complain that the operation, called coup de poing, which roughly translates to punch, is going too far. Mr. Jesus has seen his hardware shop destroyed.
The police are destroying these women's products. It's not fair. They should do their job properly because we are welcoming a man of God.
Many families in Kinshasa, a city of 17 million people, depend on the informal sector for their livelihoods. Officials complain that traders and hawkers are choking the city. Kinshasa city coordinator for the campaign, Yalala, also said traders had been warned several times to relocate before the police moved in. A spokesperson for the police said they were working under the directives of Kinshasa's regional governor and city authorities. On Friday, the facelift operation was being carried out on the main road link to the airport that will welcome Pope Francis on January 31st. But authorities say it's not just about the papal visit. It is, they assert, part of ongoing efforts to make streets and pavements tidy even after the pontiff has returned home. Asked about trader evictions, the Vatican's diplomatic representation in Kinshasa, the Apostolic Nunciateur, said it was not aware of the clean-up operations. It said the Vatican had only requested preparations for Francis's visit be done in the most sober way, and that it wants reception sites and roads to be secure to accommodate the greatest number of the faithful.
That was David Doyle of Reuters reporting. Pope Francis' visit to DRC and South Sudan is scheduled to start January 31st to February 5th. And for more on the pontiff's visit, I'm joined live via Skype from Washington by Ntal Alumasi, President Emeritus, National Association of African Catholics, USA. Ntal, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you.
Now, what's the significance of the Pope's visit to these countries, starting with DRC?
Well, many people know that at this point, the Catholic Church, is involved in what they call a synodal process, where the consultations of all Catholics. This started in 2021 and is supposed to conclude in 2024. Now, for this visit, the Pope hopes to actually talk and hear from the Catholic Church in Africa, from the youth especially, but he also wants to make sure that he highlights the incredible, what I would call, progress and growth that's happening in the Catholic Church. I think that this between 2019 and 2020 was about 2.1% growth. At the same time, he wants to make sure that in both countries, he highlights the internally displaced in South Sudan, the women and children who were victims of war, rapes in the DRC, and also look at ways to talk to the authorities about what has been a marquee of his papacy, meaning the poor, social issues, and also what I would call the climate. I can talk about
Until the Pope's visit comes at a time when the Catholic priests in certain countries have been accused of abusing young children, some of them boys, including impregnating young girls. How likely is he to address this vice?
Well, I'm not sure he's going to specifically address that at this particular point, but it will be part of the conversations that he's having about the synod, where the changes that he wants to bring to the Catholic Church. As we know about that is that maybe the issue of what I would call assault on or abuse on boys is not as highlighted as the issues of girls. But I know that previously the Pope or the Vatican has spoken about streamlining the processes about where the priests who have had children should, I'll say, emphasize and prioritize their, taking care of those children, as opposed to the ministry.
Right. Ntal, thank you very much for your insight. Ntal Alimasi is President Emeritus of the National Association of African Catholics, USA. Deforestation is imperiling the Democratic Republic of Congo's reserve as refugees displaced by war and local armed groups invade the park to mine coal. VOA's Paul Ndiho has more.
Choking smoke swells amid the buzzing of dozens of chainsaws under the majestic Nyiragongo volcano, producing scenes of devastation in the heart of the lush natural treasure in eastern Congo. In less than 2 months, more than 200 hectares of forest has been razed to stumps in this corner of Virunga National Park, where tens of thousands of Congolese have fled from clashes between rebels and the military. To survive, many have resorted to cutting down trees for firewood.
Since we have been in the refugee camp, humanitarian aid has not arrived. So most displaced are now in the park and have become loggers to find food. It's been 3 months since we received any help. So instead of starving, we come to cut wood in the park.
Often paying a tax to militia groups for access to Africa's oldest national park and home to spectacular species of wildlife, including mountain gorillas. The new arrivals were forced from homes further north by the M23 insurgency, which resumed fighting last November. Fabrice 15 says he fled the fighting in his village of Rugari, north of the provincial capital Goma. He leaves each morning for the park to make charcoal called amakara that he then sells with his 2 brothers on the side of the road. The park is indeed important, and when we cut the trees, we expose ourselves to the lack of fresh air in the future. I know that we have less oxygen if there are not more trees, but we have no choice. We are hungry. High up on the volcano slopes, soldiers and militia jointly organized the park's trafficking operation. Just a few months ago, the area was still under the authority of the Virunga National Park officials. However, these days, the rangers first called the various militias to alert them before venturing out to avoid harassment or worse.
Il y a un besoin auprès des déplacés, un besoin en bois de chauffe. There is a need among the displaced, a need for firewood, but also, on the other hand, we must protect the park, which puts us in a difficult situation. But aside from the presence of displaced people in this area, it is also worth pointing out the activism of armed groups.
In December, 2 rangers were killed and another wounded by suspected militiamen. However, despite the signing of a ceasefire deal in the region with the government last November, M23 continues to clash with rival armed groups as it conquered swaths of territory in northern Kivu province and advances towards Goma. Tens of thousands of refugees have also fled to Rwanda, which the DRC accuses of backing the Tutsi-led M23, but Kigali denies the charges. Paul Ndiho, VOA News, Washington.
Attacks in Burkina Faso have increased since October, and now civilians may be the primary targets, according to junta leader Captain Ibrahim Traore. He seized power last year on a vow to quell jihadist violence, just days after dozens of women were kidnapped in the country's insurgency hit north. Traore said extremists have switched tactics to focus their attacks on civilians. A recent report found that many more violent incidents linked to extremist groups occurred in Benin's north last year than the government is officially acknowledging, making the country the new frontline in the Sahel conflict. In Natitingu, northern Benin, Henry Wilkins meets witnesses to attacks.
Violence linked to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State group is spilling over the border from Burkina Faso into northern Benin. A resident from a village further north, who asked that his identity be protected to avoid reprisals from authorities, said he lives in fear.
Concerning security in my village, the atmosphere is not been the same for some time. We are all afraid because of what we hear.
While terrorists have not yet come to his village, for other residents of the border area, terrorist violence spilling over from Burkina Faso, Niger and Mali, as this video from social media purports to show, is already a fact of life. This man, who also asked that his identity be protected from authorities, says a group of terrorists were passing through his village and sought refuge in a woman's home. When she arrived back from the market and asked them to leave, they killed her.
They hit her because she started screaming and was scared when she saw their guns. She was told to be quiet, and they ended up killing her.
Analysts say that extremist violence spreading from Burkina Faso into Western African coastal states like Benin, Togo, Ghana and Ivory Coast is the next stage in the Sahel conflict. Benin appears to be being singled out, with more militant attacks in the second half of 2022 than other coastal nations, according to data from the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project. Asked whether the government has done enough to stop the spread of violence, one expert said,
I personally think that little has been done. The Beninese authorities may have been guilty of a blind wait-and-see attitude that cannot be explained, because we could have imagined that this situation could degenerate and expand to the point of spilling over to the coastal borders, which is unfortunately what is happening.
The Beninese government has sent large numbers of troops to the north to shore up security and accompany militarized rangers in Penjari National Park, who have also been hit by terror attacks. Analysts say the military response is having an impact, but a recent report by the Clingendale Institute, a Netherlands-based think tank, found many more violent incidents occurred in Benin's north last year than the government has officially acknowledged. In 2022, one European journalist and several Beninese journalists were arrested while attempting to report on terrorism in the north. A consultancy that has been conducting workshops with communities in northern Benin to build resilience to violent extremism says many residents are too scared to talk about the issues.
Many of the comments that we got in the research was everyone and anyone could be a terrorist right now. We have no idea who's who, but we're scared to talk about what we're seeing and what we're concerned about. So really just creating a safe space is kind of like a baseline.
Benin's government did not respond to an interview request. Henry Wilkins for VOA News, Natitingu, Benin.
Moderna Chief Executive Stéphane Bancel says that he would like to have factories making vaccines based on its messenger RNA technology on every continent as the U.S. company prepares to build 4 facilities in Canada, Australia, Britain and Kenya.
You know, we had a lot of export restriction during the pandemic, which was really, really painful for a lot of obvious reasons. Even from countries who say we will not limit exports, trust me, they were. And so we're very excited now that we are building a factory in Canada. We already broke ground in the fall. We're building a factory in Australia. We are going to start a factory this quarter in the UK, and we're also going to start building a factory in Kenya. We're talking to a couple more countries because I would really like on every continent to have mRNA capacity, because the amazing thing about mRNA is you can use the same facility, the same plant, the same machines to make any vaccine you want.
Moderna's COVID-19 vaccines are currently made in the US and Switzerland. Conflict-racked Libya donated several dozen trucks of food supplies on Tuesday to neighboring Tunisia to help alleviate hunger after repeated shortages of basic goods. A Libyan embassy spokesman says the National Unity Government in Tripoli dispatched a convoy of 96 trucks carrying sugar, oil, flour and rice from Tripoli. The operation is set to deliver a total of 170 truckloads of supplies. Tunisia has been on a downward spiral since its 2011 revolution, and in recent months there have been major shortages of goods from coffee to petrol. We are excited to hear what you think about Africa 54 and all our VOA Africa programs on our website at voaafrica.com. Still to come, a Ugandan coding academy gives youth life-changing computer skills. But first, Heidi Adams tells us what's on tap for Wednesday's Straight Talk Africa.
On the next Straight Talk Africa, U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen this week embarks on a 3-nation tour of the African continent. She is scheduled to visit Senegal, Zambia and South Africa. Secretary Yellen is expected to highlight the White House's work to deepen U.S.-Africa economic ties. Her trip comes as the U.S. tries to counter China's growing influence on the continent. We'll also discuss the growing concern over the handling of classified government files by President Joe Biden and his predecessor, Donald Trump. Join me, Heidi Adams, on the next Straight Talk Africa.
In other news, Gambian President Adama Barrow says Vice President Badara Alieu Diouf has died in India after a short illness. The Vice President left Gambia about 3 weeks ago to seek medical treatment. Diouf was appointed Vice President in 2022. He had previously served as Education Minister. Family and friends of Edwin Chiloba have buried the Kenyan LGBTQ activist. His body was found earlier this month inside a metal box left on a roadside in western Kenya near the city of Eldoret, where he worked as a fashion designer and model. And ride-hailing giant Uber says it has resumed services in Tanzania, settling a fair dispute with the government. Uber suspended services in Tanzania last April after the government introduced legislation capping maximum commission from drivers at 15% from the previous 33%. In the U.S. state of Illinois, the state's first Muslim lawmakers are now serving in the increasingly diverse House of Representatives. VOA's Ken Faraba reports from the state capital, Springfield.
It's hard to miss the signs of history marked throughout Springfield, Illinois, the capital of the state that launched the political careers of U.S. Presidents Abraham Lincoln and Barack Obama.
It is surreal, to know that Abraham Lincoln was in the same position as me.
As Nabila Syed takes her first steps on the floor of the Illinois House of Representatives, history is very much on her mind.
Our tour guide said that he actually took a picture of Barack Obama in the same exact place that me and my family were posing. So to think about the history that it is just in Springfield that exists here, and the history that we're contributing, it's an incredible feeling.
Syed and her colleague, Abdel Nasser Rashid, both Democrats, are now making their own history in the 103rd legislative session in Illinois.
Abdel Nasser Rashid.
As the first Muslim American lawmakers elected to the state house.
I think considering that Illinois has the highest per capita population of Muslims, I do wish it happened sooner.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me.
Syed defeated an incumbent Republican to win her suburban Chicago district in November.
Not only am I a Democrat, but I'm a hijab-wearing Muslim Indian American woman. So, our values, the way that we communicate our message, the way we engage our community went beyond those things that people consider to be obstacles, and we flipped our district.
At 23, Syed is among the youngest women ever elected to the Illinois House. She begins her term in the chamber led by the first black speaker, with the first female House Republican leader, and the largest Asian American caucus in the General Assembly.
As the first Palestinian elected to the legislature and as one of two Muslims, I also carry the voices of so many people who have been marginalized and have been yearning for representation.
Northern Illinois University political science professor Kikiyu Hamayotsu says that diversity matters beyond skin color.
It is more about perspectives and strategies and a position. That's why I think that they got the support from the broader community, not only Muslim population law.
And that Rashid and Syed won their races on issues beyond their identities.
The things and the policies they talked about are more about imminent important issues such as reproductive health, abortion law, and etc. And also gender issue, religious freedom, at the time when religious conservatism is rising to influence politics.
The lesson of my election, Nabila's election, and so many more. It's not just Muslims, it's folks like Han Nguyen, a Vietnamese refugee who was elected, people like Sharon Chung, a Korean American who was elected. The number of people who are in the Illinois legislature reflective of the diversity of our state. This is something that we should take pride in and something that we should embrace.
Rashid and Syed's election victories were critical in giving Democrats their largest House majority in state history.
Our democracy is composed of us, and we're contributing to making America amazing.
Kane Fairbaugh, VOA News, Springfield, Illinois.
It's time for our technology report, and joining us now is our tech reporter, Paul Ndiho. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Esther. Uganda is facing severe shortage of developers. Code Academy Uganda, a social enterprise, is rising to the challenge and giving young children and youth computer skills that can potentially change their lives. For more insight, I spoke to Edward Sempala, co-founder and executive director of Code Academy in Kampala, Uganda. Welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you, Paul.
I've read some stuff about you, how you are trying to inspire and empower young people by way of teaching them computer skills, teaching them how to code, and anything in between. Tell us a little bit about what you do at your academy.
Code Academy Uganda has been able to move its vision to greater heights within the country in Uganda, and also being able to reach children that are outside, like in Nigeria, in Kenya, and also we've had kids coming through from the UK and the US. Code Academy Uganda has a vision to ensure that every child in Uganda and Africa at large has access to computer programming. Now, we are coming from a background in Africa, and more so in Uganda in particular, where this knowledge and skills are kept away from us as children till university. And when we look at the time we are living in, the digital age we are living in, we realize that the digital economy is taking up every other sector around us. And with our children not able to learn these things at an early age, or them being not prepared for that time, it leaves us at a place of a disadvantage as a nation and a continent at large.
You were saying earlier that you have kids ranging from maybe 5 years old to 18, kids who come to you wanting to learn these skills. How important are these skills?
The coding skills are very important. Every technology out there has code within it. So when you get technology and you pull out code out of it, you literally have nothing, okay? So technology gives life, coding gives life to technology that we have around us today. Having our children able to learn coding at quite an early age, we are preparing them to become digital creators other than being digital consumers.
So you're trying to make them digital creators rather than digital consumers. Maybe, can you explain what you mean by that?
Look at our children today. You find them watching cartoons on TV at home in holiday. They will spend the whole day watching cartoons. They come back from school, they watch cartoons. If they're not watching cartoons, they are playing games on a laptop, on phones and stuff. So they are engaged in consumption of this digital content out there. And the supply is there and it's never ending. Literally, they have a new movie every other day, a new animation, a new game that is coming out on the scene. And they are tuned to that. Now, meaning they are digital consumers already, okay? But by then, we have all been inclined to digital consumption while growing up, okay? But then, if what we do at the academy is that we tap into this energy for consumption they have, and then we channel that into digital creation. So we begin to bring them to the world of computer programming by bringing what they like so much, like the animation to watch on TV, and we tell them you can create your own animation, and we show them how it's done while they're doing programming. So we channel that energy from consumption to digital creation while they are learning computer programming.
You charge a fee to have these kids learn these skills. How do you do it, or how do you make money or survive?
Well, the Academy Uganda is a not-for-profit company, of course, but we give out services that are free to our communities, but also we keep some programs, paid programs. We charge a fee in the program we call the Code Camp. It happens every holiday. And then also in the Code Club, the schools pay a fee to keep someone coming and doing their trainings every term. And then within the Code Camps, we want to put camps in every major city in the country for those that want to attend them physically. And also we look forward to having a club in at least 500 schools within Uganda by the end of next year.
I wish you luck with everything that you're trying to do.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. That was Edward Sempala, that's co-founder and chief executive of Code Academy in Kampala, Uganda. And that's today's Tech Report. Back to you, Esther.
Thank you so much, Paul, for that tech report. Be sure to join Paul Ndiho every Wednesday. And from all of us here in Washington, thank you for watching.